Sound effects is really interesting because if you play games, you start to recognize the same libraries of sounds that through everything. And there's two that I always recognize in movies. One is the sound of Max Payne 1, the door opening. It's like that. Whenever I hear that, I recognize it. The other is from Black and White, the game, and it is the kids giggling, and it's used in every single horror film ever. If you're supposed to be scared now, we just have children giggling in the background. It's all the time.
Yeah. Horror movies with a creepy little girl with dark hair.
Always dark hair.
Generic. Yeah.
What do you guys actually consider to be the scariest movie of all time? Like genuinely, like disturbing, scary.
I think scary movies. It depends on when you watch them. Like, what was the one that was in the forest and it had barely any budget? When I was a kid, that one really scared me.
Blair
but if I
Witch
watched it now, it wouldn't. Yeah. At the time I watched it, that really got to me. Now I don't think it would.
Same here, but for me, it was Paranormal Activity. I couldn't walk. There was something, it's low budget and just so well done where it's entirely up to your imagination. And I couldn't walk down like empty hallways in my parents' home for a little bit because I'd watched it when I was in high school. I would just keep looking down that hallway and it would just really get me.
I agree. It definitely comes down to like when you watched it and the impact it has on you. Because I watched The Omen when I was really young, and that freaked the shit out of me. The soundtrack, the idea of like this fucking like demonic child's like all of that. Just
I have like three. When I was a kid, I remember watching Return to Oz. And there were these guys in it called
Damn
the
it,
Wheelers.
that was going to be my choice.
Yeah, the
guys with
Wheelers
wheels for
scared
hands,
the shit out of me as a kid, dude. When they were wheeling around, following her around,
It's
like
the Wheelers,
that scared the crap out of me.
But the heads in the hallway, that shit.
Oh my god, when the
head
queen
forever.
takes the heads off and puts the new heads on.
Yeah,
that freaked me out. There was another movie.
Kid, yeah.
I can't remember. I never finished it because I was a kid. It scared the crap out of me. I think it's called The Changeling. I vaguely remember it. Like the plot's like they're in a house. There's a kid that gets drowned in like a bathtub, and then the kid's like spirit comes back and locks the guy in the house and haunts him. I think it's called The Changeling. That movie scared the shit out of me as a kid. I never finished it.
If I quickly gave mine, it would be Blair Witch Project when I was a kid. I really enjoy Quarantine, the American version.
Yeah, that's good shit.
Yeah, that one really got to me. But if I had to
where they're locked in like an apartment block, is it?
Yeah, they're trapped in and you don't know what's happening. The last scene when she's crawling towards the camera and get dragged away, that always stays with me. But if I had to give my scariest overall, it would be The Woman in Black in a theater. Because that managed to scare me and like have an impact. I was like, I'm
the Daniel
in a
Radcliffe
theater.
That's Daniel Radcliffe, right? Yeah,
No,
that was.
Yeah, but it's actually the
jump
theatrical
scares in that
performance.
one.
The theatrical performance is done by one bloke, and it's just a one-man show, and they have an actor with a mask.
Oh yeah.
It's
I've
in a
seen
theater.
That.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's like it's in the theater. I'm not gonna be scared. There's loads of people around me, and I'm like, no, that actually impacted me when I watched it. And there was jump scares. There was people coming out of the crowd through the background and stuff. It's the best theatrical thing I've ever seen. Definitely would have scared me more than any.
Another scene that's really scary. It's in a Japanese movie called, I think it's called Pulse or Cairo. Pulse. I think it's called Pulse.
That's
Cairo's maybe Japanese.
Contact.
Yeah, there's a scene in that movie. I mean, there's a guy that did a video on it called Speakama Movies. I think it's called. I remember watching that, and there was there's this like clip where there's like a woman. She's like a ghost, and she's walking down a hallway. And then she just starts like running on all fours, but like the way she does it, dude, I recommend it. If you want to scare the shit out of yourself, I guess, like watch that scene.
I think,
and just the way she gets down, and then she like crawls over like the couch, and like then you hear him scream outside the apartment. Great, really scary.
I think there's something really effective. I'm sorry to diverge into like a whole discussion about horror, but there's something really effective about the normal turned abnormal. And so if you take, say, a person who starts out walking normally, but then their movements become really unnatural, a way a normal human would never move or walk. There's something just really disturbing about that. Yeah, because your brain's telling you there's something deeply wrong about this person.
It's the same with dolls, the usage of dolls, because you associate that with such a sort of naivety of childhood, and then it's demonic in some way. It's just such a frightening prospect.
It's why they always use little girls. There is something innately creepy about that. That's why it's used across all horror films. I always remember the first Resident Evil film where she's like, "You're all going to die down here." I don't think that would have had the same kind of impact if it was said by like a bloke with a deep voice.
Yeah.
But the fact that it was said by a little child, it made it creepier.
You're all going to die down here.
Have you seen the trailer for
Like Hagrid
Abigail?
pops up and tells you that.
Have you seen the trailer for Abigail, the little girl who's a ballerina who happens to also be a vampire?
No,
I haven't watched that.
It looks decent.
Check
It
it
looks
out.
decent. It's,
Did any of you
wild.
guys see Lights Out? David F. Sandberg movie that he developed from a short film he made.
I saw the short film version, which I think is actually pretty scary.
Yeah, the movie itself I wouldn't recommend, but there's like individual scenes that he made that are fucking real creepy. It's a creature that you can only see when the lights are off, and what I mean by that is that you can kind of make her out in the darkness, but you can't make her out at all if the lights are fully on.
Oh, that's
And I think
frightening.
she stops existing when the lights are on as well. It's very difficult to understand mechanically, but you know, there's a scene where a girl is waking up in her bed and she can hear scratching, and she can just make out someone is scratching on the wall like a shadow, and then the lights are turning on outside through like a neon timer that's on some kind of like restaurant or whatever. So keep seeing her, then not seeing her, seeing her, not seeing her as she's you know scrolling
Getting
on the wall.
closer.
And there's a payoff where like she's looking right at her and she's doing it, and then the creature turns her neck really quickly and looks directly at the person who's on it, and then the lights turn on, so she's just like gone again. And it's what Baggerson was talking about. Imagination is so much of a power when it comes to horror, because you're just like, fuck, what did that mean? Where did that come from? Oh god.
The last 5 seconds of that lights out thing is scary.
You see that with games. There are some people that can go through a horror game, they're not scared at all. But it's because their imagination only sees what's in front of them. Whereas the real horror in games comes from what do you think is about to happen, which is generally worse than whatever is about to happen. So you're always making up the next level yourself, and they just put you in the situation to make your imagination run wild. And I think the best fears come from like instinct. So it is like, why are you afraid of the dark? It is because if you're out in a forest, the dark could hold anything, could have any predator, could be there. And so the sensible person is afraid and on guard by what else could be coming for you. And so the best movies do play on what already exists in the human psyche.
I want to talk about a scene from Paranormal Activity 3, because in that, they go back to 1980s. And Paranormal Activity is all just, based on surveillance of the house. So you're sort of you're getting to see a lot more than the characters in the movie are getting to see. And so because it's in the 1980s, the man who's suspecting that there's something going on in the house, he sets up this oscillating fan. He sets up a video camera. And so as it's oscillating, and there's a babysitter who has put the kids to bed. And so she's in the kitchen, and you get a camera shot of this kid-like figure covered in a white sheet sneaking up behind her. And you think, oh, that's normal because they were just playing this game where they were covering themselves in sheets and just, a couple minutes ago. And then it transitions away, and it's inching closer and closer where you don't get to see that shot. And again, the oscillation comes back to frame where you see her in frame, and then the sheet just drops and you realize it's not a kid playing around. But then again, the camera transitions away. And so you're just caught in this moment of what's happening that I can't see. And then it comes back to her, and she didn't notice that there was a figure behind her because she was doing the dishes. So she just turns around and sees that there's just a sheet on the ground. So she doesn't think anything of it. And that whole dynamic is just so beautifully done. I think that movie just really had me on the edge because, again, it involved kids in it, really young kids who are the only ones who, I think the youngest is the only one who was able to see the demon, supposedly.
Well, that was
I love scary movies.
If I think back to The Woman in Black in the theater, there were two moments that have stayed with me literally for decades. It's been like 20 years since I've seen it at this point. And the two moments that I always remember is like there's a cart and the noise is getting larger and larger and larger. And the guy's like right in the back, but in the background and without any kind of messaging, you just see the second person just walk past the background. Like they never mention it. It's just if you notice it, you notice it. If you don't, you don't. And then there's another part where they're just sitting in a rocking chair, and as they're rocking, they just stand up and walk out. But they do it so unnaturally. It's so bizarre, the movement. that it's creepy. And it's not necessarily, a lot of things rely on like the jump scare. It's like, I want the adrenaline push. It's not that. It is the creepiness. This is abnormal and this is weird, and I should be suspicious of this thing that really leaves like the lasting impact on you.
There was a scene I always remember in a movie called House on Haunted Hill, right? Which was kind of just a goofy horror for the most part, but they did a really cool effect at one point where someone's watching one of the ghosts through a surveillance camera, and it was achieved by having the actor walk backwards and then playing the footage backwards so that he's going forwards, and you get this really unnatural gait of him, and it's just such a cool effect. But again, it just plays into that feeling of there's something very, very wrong about what I'm seeing, but it's just
the uncanny
a person
valley
walking. Yeah, exactly.
That's what the scene in Cairo is. It's uncanny valley. That's why it's creepy. Yeah.
Yep.
Another scene
Also-
for me that's more recent is it was in Hereditary, really quick one, when she's looking down the hallway and she sees her dead mom standing there, kind of like she's in the darkness, and then she like turns the light on and the mom's gone. For some reason, that like 3-second scene just unnerved the living crap out of me. I don't know why.
Dude, that same film with that shot where the person's waking up and the mum is in the corner of the room up in the ceiling, you know? That shit. When I was first watching that film, it took me a little bit, but I finally noticed it and I had a jump scare from it. I was looking around the screen like, whoa, what the fuck?
Yeah.
My favorite thing about the Uncanny Valley is where it's like, when you realize the Uncanny Valley exists, you also have to realize that at some point in history, something happened, something occurred where you had to be so scared of something that looked just like you, but wasn't you, that you needed to be scared of it. That's the real fear. It's like, what was that thing?
That's a good point, actually.
Well,
what freaked our
unnerving.
ancestors
What
out so
made
much?
you have the Uncanny Valley effect is the real fear.
To the point where like we're still like 100
it's
generations
instinct.
past, like
It's
still
probably
afraid of it.
aliens
That
or
means it
whatever.
had a breeding advantage, the fact that it's lasted this long.
You'll have to excuse me because I'm going to sound like such a stupid know-it-all here, annoying know-it-all, but it's not as sinister as you might think, because if you look at gorillas where you can't see the whites of their eyes, right? You can't tell where they're looking. And that's one thing that one thing humans like is that they like to know what the other person's intention is. Like even the whole concept of a handshake is to know that you're not carrying a weapon, right? Is kind of how it developed. And same with, we like to be able to read expressions. So there might have been versions of very early human beings that had faces that weren't very expressive, or that had, we didn't have the whites of the eyes. And that slowly sort of that type of human being was more likely to survive because it didn't get killed by a competing tribe, or however you want to think about it.
Yeah.
And this is the same reason. And same with expression. We like to know what people are thinking. We like to know where they're looking while we're talking to them. Those like eye contact and facial expressions are really important in us gauging whether someone's a threat or not. And so I think that's where they sort of died out and we lost that. But there's that uneasiness that still exists, is that when we see someone where we can't tell what they're thinking, it makes us very uncomfortable. And that's why even this introduction of Botox is so strange, that we're looking at faces that are only partially moving, and we can pick up on it immediately that someone has had work done. We can just tell right off the bat that there's something there that doesn't quite feel right, and where they're almost turning into cadavers, right? If you look at Madonna's face, it's actually frightening looking. And I think it's for that reason, is that you can't tell what they're thinking.
That's
Yeah,
why
I
I
mean,
have
put her in a hole.
sunglasses for eyes, you see, so like I can make
Yeah.
people uncomfortable because they don't know what I'm thinking about.
The scientific consensus is like whatever the missing link was, or Neanderthals, they look close enough to human, but you also didn't want to breed backwards, and so like
It's like
that's why
Scottish people.
yeah, it's like you stay over there.
It's like
we're gonna do it
you're
with-
vaguely humanoid, but I
we'll
wouldn't want to breed
move
with
past
you.
you. We're more evolved. Thank you very much.